had seen many strange things during his 5 years as a deep space salvage operator, but nothing quite like the small figure huddled behind the twisted wreckage of what appeared to be an escape pod. The girl couldn't have been more than 12 Earth years old, though her pale blue skin and the delicate gill slits along her neck marked her as definitely not human. She trembled as his boots crunched across the debris field on the asteroid's surface, her large silver eyes tracking his every movement. Kept his hands visible and moved slowly, the way he'd learned when dealing with frightened animals back on Earth. His suit's translation software kicked in as she spoke, her voice high and desperate. "Please, human, help me. My mother is trapped in the Sky Hunter's nest." Stopped dead in his tracks. Sky Hunters were legendary throughout this sector of space, massive predatory creatures that built their lairs in the upper atmospheres of gas giants. No one had ever successfully rescued anyone from a Sky Hunter's nest. Most people didn't even believe they existed. "Easy there, kid," said, crouching down to her level. "What's your name?" She whispered, "Of the people, our ship. The Sky Hunter took it 3 days ago. My mother pushed me into the escape pod, but she couldn't make it out." Studied the wreckage around them. The escape pod was definitely design. He recognized the bioluminescent panels and organic curves. But it was old, maybe 20 years or more. The metal was scorched and twisted, bearing the telltale claw marks of something enormous. "I need you to listen to me carefully," said. "Sky Hunters are incredibly dangerous. Even if your mother is still alive, which is unlikely after 3 days, no one has ever successfully infiltrated their nests." The little girl's eyes filled with tears, but she straightened her shoulders with surprising determination. "My mother is alive. I can feel her through our bond. Mothers and daughters share a psychic connection until we reach maturity. She's hurt, but she's alive." Felt his heart sink. He'd heard about the mental bonds from other spacers. If the kid really could sense her mother, then the woman might actually still be breathing. But that only made the situation worse. It meant someone was suffering in that nightmare nest. "Look, I understand you're scared and you want to help your mother, but this isn't something one person can handle. We need to contact the Galactic Defense Force, maybe put together a rescue fleet." "There's no time," interrupted, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. "The Sky Hunters don't keep prey alive for long. They like to play with their food first. My mother has maybe 2 days before." She couldn't finish the sentence, but understood. He'd heard the stories about Sky Hunter feeding habits. They were not pleasant. Stood up and gazed out at the gas giant that dominated the asteroid sky. 442C was a massive world, its swirling clouds painted in shades of amber and rust. Somewhere up there, in the crushing depths of that atmosphere, was a Sky Hunter's nest, and apparently one very brave woman who had saved her daughter's life. "The nest is in the storm belt," said quietly, following his gaze. "The Sky Hunters always build there because the electrical activity masks their biosignatures from scanners." Turned back to study the girl. There was something odd about her story. Were known for being peaceful traders and scholars. They rarely ventured into dangerous sectors of space, and they certainly didn't travel alone with just a mother and daughter. "What was your ship doing in this system? This is pretty far off the normal trade routes." The girl hesitated, her silver eyes darting away from his. "We were researching. My mother she studies dangerous creatures." That explained a lot. Had met a few over the years, and they were all completely insane. The kind of people who thought getting close to things that could eat you was a good career choice. "She was studying Sky Hunters?" asked. Nodded reluctantly. "She's spent her whole life trying to understand them. She believes they're not just mindless predators. She thinks they have a complex social structure, maybe even intelligence." Almost laughed, but stopped himself when he saw the earnest expression on the girl's face. "Kid, Sky Hunters are death machines. They're like flying sharks crossed with tornadoes. They don't build civilizations, they just kill things." "That's what everyone says," replied stubbornly. "But my mother has documented evidence that they use tools, that they communicate in ways we don't understand. She was trying to make peaceful contact when the attack happened." Rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. Trying to make friends with Galaxy's most feared predator. It was exactly the kind of stupidly brave thing that humans were famous for, except this time it was a doing it. "All right, let's say I believe you. Let's say your mother is alive and needs rescue. Do you have any idea how insane it would be for me to fly into a Sky Hunter nest?" "You're human," said simply, as if that explained everything. Stared at her. What's that supposed to mean? Humans are the only species that regularly does impossible things. You fight wars against overwhelming odds and win. You explore places that should kill you and survive. You take risks that would terrify any sane species. Eyes brightened with desperate hope. My mother always said that if she ever got into real trouble, she'd want a human to come save her. Felt a strange mix of pride and annoyance. Humans had built quite a reputation in the galaxy over the past century since first contact. They were known for being stubborn, reckless, and impossibly lucky. It was a reputation that had saved his species from slavery more than once, but it also meant everyone expected them to solve problems that couldn't be solved. Look, I appreciate the confidence in my species, but I'm just a salvage operator. I find broken ships and strip them for parts. I'm not some kind of hero. The girl studied him for a long moment, taking in his hands, the patches on his environmental suit, the plasma cutter hanging from his belt. You work alone in deep space, in places where no one would ever find you if something went wrong. That makes you either very brave or very stupid. Definitely the second one, muttered. My mother used to tell me stories about humans during the Void War. How your people held the line at station when everyone else ran. How human medics would fly into active battle zones to rescue wounded soldiers from any species, not just their own. Remembered those stories too. He'd been too young to fight in the Void War, but his father had been there. Captain David of the UES Defiance, killed in action defending a medical ship from raider pirates. His father had died saving people he'd never met from a species that wasn't his own. That was different, said quietly. That was a war, this is just. Just what? One mother trying to save her daughter, one daughter trying to save her mother. His voice grew stronger. How is that different from war? Looked at the girl again, really looked at her. She was small and frightened, stranded on an asteroid millions of miles from home, with no one to help her but a human salvager who should have known better. But there was steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. She reminded him of his father in a way that made his chest tight. Even if I wanted to help, which I'm not saying I do, I don't have the right equipment. My ship is built for salvage work, not atmospheric diving. The pressure down in those storm clouds would crush it like an empty can. The Sky Hunters survived down there, pointed out. So did our ship, at least until the attack. There has to be a way. Walked over to the escape pod wreckage and knelt down to examine the hull plating. The metal was definitely designed for extreme pressure resistance. They were master engineers when it came to biomechanical systems. Their ships were grown as much as built, using living metal that could adapt to different environments. Your mother's ship, said slowly. What class was it? A research vessel, the Singing Whale. She could handle pressure up to 800 atmospheres and had full atmospheric maneuvering capability. Whistled low, that was serious hardware. No wonder they'd been able to get close to a Sky Hunter nest. And the Hunter just grabbed the whole ship. They're big enough, said simply. Adult Sky Hunters can be over 2 kilometers long. To them, our ship was just a small meal. Tried to wrap his mind around creatures that large. He'd seen the hollows, read the reports, but it was hard to truly comprehend something the size of a small city that could fly through the crushing depths of a gas giant's atmosphere. I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Is there any chance your mother isn't just researching these things? Is she working on something specific? The girl bit her lower lip, a gesture that reminded how young she really was. She thought she found something. In the Sky Hunter behavior patterns, something that might be important. Important how? She wouldn't tell me everything. She said it was too dangerous for me to know. But she mentioned something about the Sky Hunters not being native to this galaxy. About them maybe being refugees from somewhere else. Felt a chill run down his spine. If Sky Hunters weren't originally from the Milky Way, that raised some very disturbing questions. What could drive creatures that powerful to flee their home? And what would happen if whatever they were running from followed them here? Your mother found evidence of this. She said she did, hidden in their migration patterns, in the way they choose their nesting sites. She thought they might be trying to communicate, to warn someone about something coming. Looked up at the gas giant again, its massive bulk seeming somehow more ominous now. Somewhere in those swirling clouds was a woman who might have discovered something that could change everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. and she was trapped in the nest of creatures that might not be the mindless predators everyone believed them to be. "Damn," said quietly. "Does that mean you'll help me?" asked, hope creeping back into her voice. Was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. The smart thing to do was to take the girl to the nearest inhabited system and turn her over to the authorities. Let them deal with the rescue mission, if there even was one. It was the safe choice, the sane choice. But thought about his father again, about the stories of humans who did impossible things because someone needed them too. He thought about a woman floating in the darkness of a sky hunter nest, probably injured, certainly terrified, waiting for help that might never come. "I must be out of my mind," muttered. Then he looked at and nodded. "All right, kid, I'll help you, but we do this my way, understand? I'm not flying blind into a nest full of monsters without a plan." His face lit up with joy and relief. She threw her arms around in an impulsive hug, her small frame trembling with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Gently patted her shoulder, wondering what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. "Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work to do, and there's no guarantee this is going to work." "It will work," said with absolute confidence. "You're human. Humans always find a way." Hoped she was right, because they were going to need all the human stubbornness and crazy luck they could get. 2 hours later was regretting his decision as he stared at the readouts on his ship's engineering console. The Iron Phoenix was a good ship, built tough for the harsh realities of deep space salvage work, but she wasn't designed for what they were planning. "The pressure differential alone will crush us," explained to who was perched on a crate nearby, watching him work. "Gas giants aren't like planets with surfaces. The atmosphere just keeps getting thicker and thicker until it becomes liquid, then solid at the core. We'll be diving down into pressures that could turn us into paste." "What about the Hull-Singer modifications?" asked, pointing to the wreckage of her escape pod that had managed to haul aboard. Looked at the biomechanical components he'd salvaged from the pod. The technology was unlike anything human engineers had developed. Instead of rigid metal plates, ships used a living hull that could adapt to environmental pressures, actually growing stronger under stress. "I've never worked with Hull-Singer tech before," admitted, "and I'm definitely not qualified to perform major modifications on a working ship." "I am," said quietly. Turned to stare at her. "You're 12 years old." "I'm 14 by standards, and I've been working with Hull-Singer technology since I was old enough to hold tools. My mother is a researcher, but she's also one of our best bioengineers. She taught me everything she knows." Studied the girl more carefully. Now that he looked, he could see the small scars on her hands that spoke of years working with delicate equipment. Her movements around the ship had been confident and sure, like someone who understood technology at an instinctive level. "You're saying you can modify my ship to survive diving into a gas giant?" "Not exactly," replied. "Hull-Singer modifications take months to properly integrate, but I can create a temporary bioshell that will reinforce your existing hull. It won't last long, maybe 6 hours at most, but it should be enough." Felt a spark of hope. How temporary is temporary? "The bioshell will start to break down after about 4 hours under extreme pressure. After 6 hours, it will fail completely. We'd have to be back in normal space before then, or we die horribly." Finished. "Got it." Nodded solemnly. "But it's our only chance. My mother doesn't have much time left." Looked at the components scattered across his cargo bay. Hull-Singer technology was based on genetically engineered organisms that could survive in vacuum and bond with metal at the molecular level. It was beautiful, elegant, and completely alien to human engineering principles. "All right," he said finally. "What do you need me to do?" The next several hours were some of the strangest of his life. Under's guidance, he helped cultivate the Hull-Singer organisms in a nutrient bath salvaged from the escape pod. The creatures looked like a cross between coral and metal filings, growing in complex geometric patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "They're responding to the Phoenix's electromagnetic signature," explained, monitoring the growth with instruments that seemed to be part biological, part electronic. "Each ship has a unique M field based on its power systems and hull composition. The Hull-Singers are learning to harmonize with it." "This is insane," muttered, watching the organism's pulse with bioluminescent light. "On Earth, we'd call this some kind of infection." Humans think too rigidly about the boundaries between living and non-living matter, replied. 2. Everything is alive in some sense. Your ship has a spirit, a personality. The hull singers are just helping it become stronger. As if responding to her words, the Phoenix's lights flickered momentarily. Felt a odd sensation, almost like the ship was stretching itself. Is it supposed to do that? He asked nervously. The bonding process has begun, said with satisfaction. Your ship is accepting the hull singers. That's good. Sometimes the organism and ship spirits conflict and the process fails. Decided not to think too hard about what it meant for his ship to have a spirit. He'd grown fond of the old bucket of bolts over the years, but he'd never imagined she might be conscious in some way. While they waited for the hull singer organisms to mature, worked on other preparations. He loaded emergency supplies, checked their atmospheric diving equipment, and tried to plan for every possible contingency. The more he learned about sky hunters, the more impossible their mission seemed. According to the galactic database, no one has ever successfully communicated with a sky hunter, told as he reviewed the files. They attack everything that enters their territory, ships, probes, even other sky hunters sometimes. That's because no one has tried to understand them, replied. She was working on some kind of translation device, cobbling together biotech with human electronics. My mother believes they have a complex language based on electromagnetic pulses and atmospheric disturbances. She's been studying their communication patterns for years. And you think this thing you're building will let us talk to them? It should allow basic communication, yes. Simple concepts like peace or help or trade. Whether they'll listen is another question. Watch the girl work. Her small hands moved with incredible precision, weaving bio-optical fibers through human circuit boards in patterns that looked almost artistic. Whatever else she was clearly brilliant. Your mother taught you all of this? He asked. Nodded. Children begin technical education very early. By the time we reach adulthood, most of us are experts in multiple fields. My mother specializes in xenobiology and bioengineering, but she also knows atmospheric physics, electromagnetic theory, and basic psychology for 12 different species. Impressive. What about your father? His hand stilled for a moment. He died when I was young. Raider attack on our colony. My mother raised me alone. Felt a familiar pang. I'm sorry, I lost my father too in the Void War. The raiders took a lot from many species, said quietly. That's part of why my mother's work is so important. She believes the sky hunters might be refugees from the same force that created the raiders. That caught attention. The raiders were still one of the galaxy's great mysteries. They'd appeared from dark space 20 years ago with technology that was decades ahead of anything the galactic community possessed. The Void War had lasted 5 years and cost millions of lives before the raiders suddenly vanished back into the void. Your mother thinks the sky hunters are running from whoever made the raiders. She thinks the raiders might have been running too, replied. From something even worse, and now that something might be coming here. Felt cold despite the ship's warm atmosphere. The idea of something that could scare the raiders was terrifying. The raiders had been unstoppable killing machines, destroying entire star systems without apparent reason. What kind of evidence does your mother have? Astronomical data, mostly. The sky hunters appeared in our galaxy about 50 years ago, roughly the same time as the first raider scout ships. Their migration patterns suggest they're not hunting or feeding but fleeing, always moving away from the same region of dark space. The void between, whispered. Nodded, the empty region beyond the galactic rim. Nothing lives out there, or at least nothing that we know of. Had heard spacers tell stories about the void between, a region of space so empty that ships could travel for decades without seeing a single star. Some claim there were things living in that darkness, creatures that fed on light itself. Most rational people dismissed such talk as superstition. But if the raiders and sky hunters were both refugees from the void between, maybe those stories weren't as crazy as they sounded. Hull singers are ready, announced, interrupting his dark thoughts. Turned to look at the biomechanical organisms. They had grown to cover most of the cargo bay floor, forming intricate patterns that pulsed with soft blue light. As he watched, they began to move, flowing like liquid metal toward the ship's hull. Are they going outside? Asked nervously. They need to bond with the external hull, explained. Don't worry, they're designed to survive in vacuum. The process should take about an hour. Felt the ship vibrate slightly as the hull singers spread across the Phoenix's exterior. On his monitoring systems, he could see them forming a secondary hull, weaving themselves into the existing structure like living reinforcement cables. "This is definitely the weirdest day of my career," muttered. "My mother always says that working with alien technology requires an open mind," replied. "Humans are good at that. Most species are too rigid in their thinking to adapt to truly foreign concepts." Is that why she was studying sky hunters? Because humans are good at dealing with weird stuff? Partly, but also because humans are the only species that might be crazy enough to actually try talking to them. Everyone else is too afraid. Could understand that. Sky hunters had been the boogeyman of space travel for decades. Parents told children stories about the massive creatures that could swallow entire ships, that hunted in the storm belts of gas giants where no rescue was possible. But now he was planning to fly directly into their territory and try to have a conversation. "I must be completely insane," he said for the dozenth time that day. "Probably," agreed cheerfully, "but that's what makes you human." An hour later, the Hull-Singer integration was complete. Ran full diagnostics on all ship systems, marveling at the readouts. The biomechanical organisms had somehow increased the Phoenix's hull strength by 300% while actually reducing overall mass. It was like magic. "How is this even possible?" he asked. "Hull-Singers work by redistributing stress at the quantum level," she explained. "They turn pressure into energy, which they then use to strengthen the molecular bonds of your existing hull. The stronger the external pressure, the stronger your ship becomes, up to a point." "What's the point where they fail?" "We're not sure. No one has ever tested Hull-Singer organisms under the conditions we're going to face. My mother estimates they should hold until we reach about 800 atmospheres of pressure." Checked his charts of 442C. The storm belt where sky hunters nested was located at about 600 atmospheres. They should have some safety margin, assuming mother was right about the organism's capabilities. "All right," said, settling into the pilot's seat. "Let's go rescue your mother." The Phoenix lifted off from the asteroid's surface with unusual smoothness. The Hull-Singer organisms seemed to be affecting the ship's flight characteristics, making her more responsive to control inputs. Had the odd sensation that the ship was eager to fly, like a racehorse champing at the bit. "Course laid in for 442C, he announced. "Transit time approximately 4 hours. "My mother's life signs are getting weaker," said, monitoring her translation device which apparently also served as a psychic link detector. "We need to hurry." Push the Phoenix's engines to their maximum safe output. The modified ship responded beautifully, slicing through space at velocities that should have been impossible for a vessel her size. Whatever the Hull-Singers were doing to the ship's structure, they were also improving her performance. As they approached the gas giant, felt his resolve wavering. 442C filled a massive world wrapped in bands of colored cloud. Somewhere in those roiling storms were creatures the size of cities, and they were about to fly right into the middle of them. Said quietly, "Are you absolutely certain your mother is still alive?" The girl closed her eyes, pressing one hand to her temple. "She's alive, hurt and scared, but alive. I can feel her presence." "And you're sure she's in a sky hunter nest?" "The psychic link has a range of about 50,000 kilometers. She's definitely somewhere in the upper atmosphere." Took a deep breath and began the atmospheric entry sequence. "Well, here goes nothing." The Phoenix plunged into the gas giant's atmosphere like a falling star, her hull beginning to glow as friction heated the Hull-Singer organisms. Instead of burning away like normal ablative shielding, the biomechanical creatures seemed to absorb the heat and grow stronger. As they descended deeper into the crushing atmosphere, watched the pressure readings climb. 100 atmospheres, 200, 300. The Hull-Singers pulsed with increasing brightness, their living light visible through the viewports. "There," said suddenly, pointing at something in the swirling clouds ahead. "Sky Hunter territory." Looked where she was pointing and felt his blood run cold. Rising from the storm clouds like living mountains were shapes that comprehension. Sky Hunters, dozens of them, their massive bodies undulating through the dense atmosphere with impossible grace. Each creature was easily the size of a capital ship, their bioluminescent patterns creating a light show that was both beautiful and terrifying. And somewhere among those titanic predators was one small woman, waiting for rescue that might never come. The Phoenix shuddered as atmospheric currents buffeted her hull, but the hull-singer organisms held firm. Watched his instruments in amazement as the pressure readings climbed past 500 atmospheres with no sign of structural failure. The biomechanical creatures were somehow converting the crushing pressure into additional hull strength, just as had promised. There, whispered, pointing through the swirling clouds, the nest. Followed her gaze and felt his heart stop. Ahead of them, suspended in the eye of a massive storm, was a structure that couldn't exist. Sky hunters weren't supposed to be builders. They were supposed to be simple predators, driven only by hunger and territorial instinct. But what saw was unmistakably architecture. Enormous organic spires twisted through the calm air at the storm's center, their surfaces covered in the same bioluminescent patterns that decorated the sky hunters themselves. The structures pulsed with rhythmic light, like a vast heartbeat made visible. "My God," breathed, "your mother was right, they're not just animals." "The nest is beautiful," said softly. "I can see why my mother wanted to study them." As they drew closer, could see sky hunters moving through the structure with purpose and coordination. Some were clearly tending to what looked like egg chambers, while others seemed to be involved in construction activities. It was like watching a city of giants going about their daily business. "How do we find your mother in all of that?" asked. Closed her eyes, concentrating on their psychic link. "She's in the central spire about halfway up, I think. I think they're keeping her in some kind of observation chamber." Observation chamber. They're studying her the same way she was trying to study them. Felt a chill. The idea of intelligent sky hunters was disturbing enough. The thought that they might be conducting experiments on their prisoners was terrifying. "Incoming transmission," the Phoenix's computer announced suddenly. Nearly jumped out of his seat. "Transmission from where?" "Unknown source. Electromagnetic pulse pattern, extremely complex." Grabbed her translation device, her fingers flying over the biomechanical controls. "They're trying to communicate with us." The device hummed and crackled for several seconds before producing a sound like whale song mixed with static. Then, impossibly, words formed in its mind, not heard but directly understood. "Small flyers come to the storm heart. Why do the small flyers enter the domain of the deep singers?" Stared at, "Did you hear that?" "The translation is working," she said excitedly. "They're talking to us." Activated his comm system, hopping the hull singer modifications had affected it as well. We come seeking one of our people, a small flyer who was taken during a misunderstanding. We wish only to retrieve her and leave in peace." The response came quickly, filled with what could only describe as amusement. "The knowledge seeker is not taken. The knowledge seeker is welcomed. She shares understanding with the deep singers." "They're saying your mother is there willingly?" asked. The girl shook her head firmly. "She's hurt and trapped. I can feel her fear." Tried again. "The knowledge seeker's offspring wishes to ensure her parents' safety. May we speak with her?" There was a long pause before the answer came. "The knowledge seeker learns important truths. The small flyers from beyond must understand. The darkness that devours comes. All must prepare." Felt ice in his veins. The darkness that devours. Before the sky hunters could respond, his translation device erupted with a new signal. This one was different, weaker but unmistakably familiar. "Is that you?" The voice was clearly speaking in their native language. "Mother," cried, tears streaming down her face. "Mother, we're here to rescue you." "Beloved daughter, you should not have come here. It's too dangerous. The sky hunters have shown me things, terrible things. The darkness is real and it's coming." Maneuvered the Phoenix closer to the central spire, following the transmission source. As they approached, he could see a transparent chamber embedded in the structure's wall. Inside, a figure that could only be his mother was floating in what appeared to be an oxygenated fluid. "Doctor," said, using the formal address, "your daughter asked me to help rescue you." "Human," the surprise in the woman's voice was evident even through the translator. "You came into Sky Hunter territory to rescue a stranger." "Long story," replied. "Right now, let's focus on getting you out of there." "I don't think I want to leave," Doctor said quietly. "They've shown me the truth about what's coming. The entity that destroyed the raiders that drove them to become what they were. It's moving toward our galaxy. Felt the blood drain from his face. What kind of entity? They call it the darkness that devours. It's not alive in any sense we understand, but it consumes everything it touches. Stars, planets, entire civilizations. The Sky Hunters are the last survivors of a galaxy it destroyed 3 million years ago. 3 million years, whispered. They've been running ever since, trying to stay ahead of it, but it's relentless. It follows the quantum wake left by faster-than-light travel, tracking civilizations across the void. The more advanced a species becomes, the brighter they shine in its perception. Was sobbing now, whether from relief at hearing her mother's voice or terror at what she was learning, couldn't tell. How long do we have? Asked. Perhaps 50 years before it reaches the galactic rim, maybe less. And there's no way to fight it. Doctor was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was filled with desperate hope. The Sky Hunters believe there might be a way. They've been gathering data for millions of years, studying the entity's behavior. They think it can be redirected. Redirected how? By creating a quantum wake so bright, so attractive, that it follows that instead of seeking out inhabited systems, a sacrificial fleet that leads it away from populated space. Began to understand. They want to use our faster-than-light technology. Human FTL drives burn brighter than any other species' technology. A small human fleet could potentially draw the entity away from the entire galaxy. A suicide mission, said flatly. Not necessarily. If the mathematics are correct, the fleet could lead the entity into a black hole or neutron star cluster. The gravitational forces might be enough to contain it. Thought about the implications. A small human fleet, flying directly into the face of an entity that had destroyed entire galaxies, hopping to save everyone else by sacrificing themselves. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of thing humans were famous for. Why are the Sky Hunters telling you this? Asked. Because they've been waiting for a species crazy enough to attempt it. They've studied humans for decades, ever since you first achieved faster-than-light travel. You're the only people who might actually try something this suicidal. Almost laughed. Great, we're the universe's designated kamikaze pilots. You're heroes, Doctor said softly. Every species in the galaxy owes you a debt they can never repay. The Sky Hunters want to offer their help in preparing for what's coming. Suddenly, the chamber containing Doctor began to move, rising through the structure toward what looked like an airlock. The Sky Hunter voice returned, speaking directly into their minds. The knowledge seeker returns to her offspring. The deep singers offer alliance to the small flyers. Together, perhaps the darkness can be turned aside. They're releasing your mother, told, who was still crying. I can feel her getting closer, whispered. She's not hurt badly, exhausted and scared, but alive. The airlock cycled open, and Doctor emerged in an environment suit that looked like a cross between biotech and Sky Hunter organic technology. She was a tall, graceful woman with the same silver eyes as her daughter, though hers were filled with knowledge that no one should have to carry. Mother launched herself across the Phoenix's cockpit as Doctor came aboard. Watched the reunion with mixed emotions. He was glad they'd successfully rescued but the information she'd brought back was terrifying. An entity that destroyed galaxies, heading toward the Milky Way. And apparently humanity was the only species crazy enough to potentially stop it. Doctor said after the initial celebration had died down, do the Sky Hunters really think this plan could work? The scientist looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. They've run the calculations millions of times over millions of years. It's theoretically possible. Whether any pilot could actually execute such a mission and survive, that's another question. But you'd need volunteers, said. Yes, humans who understand the stakes and are willing to risk everything to save the galaxy. Thought about his father, about the stories of humans doing impossible things because someone needed them to. He thought about the reputation his species had built, for being stubborn and reckless and impossibly brave. When do we start? He asked. Doctor smiled for the first time since coming aboard. I was hoping you'd say that. As the Phoenix climbed back towards space, its Hulsinger modifications glowing with stored energy from the deep atmosphere, reflected on how much his life had changed in a single day. He'd started as a simple salvage operator looking for scrap metal. Now he was apparently part of a secret alliance between humans and sky hunters, preparing for a battle against an entity that could destroy the entire galaxy. "You know," he said to who was curled up next to her mother, "when you asked me for help, I thought you meant something simple, like fixing a broken engine or chasing off some pirates." Grinned at him, her silver eyes sparkling with mischief. "I told you humans always find a way to do impossible things." "Yeah, well, this might be the most impossible thing anyone's ever tried." "That's what makes you human," Doctor said softly. "Any rational species would look at odds like these and surrender. Only humans are stubborn enough to keep fighting even when the situation is hopeless." Looked out at the stars, somewhere among which an unimaginable darkness was slowly making its way toward everything they loved and cherished. In 50 years, maybe less, it would arrive at the galactic rim. And when it did, humanity would be waiting. "I guess we'd better start making some plans," said. "The Sky Hunters have been preparing for this moment for 3 million years," Doctor replied. "They have technologies and knowledge that could help us build the kind of ships we'll need, but it will require unprecedented cooperation between species." "Think the Galactic Council will believe us?" "They'll have to. The Sky Hunters are willing to come out of hiding to share everything they know. When creatures that have been considered myths start giving testimony about cosmic threats, people tend to pay attention." Nodded, already imagining the chaos that revelation would cause. But chaos was something humans were good at handling. "One more question," said. "Why didn't the Sky Hunters try to communicate with anyone before now? Why wait until your mother found them?" Doctor smiled sadly. "Because they needed to find someone who would listen. Most species are too afraid of them to consider the possibility that they might be trying to help. But humans are crazy enough to listen to anyone, even their worst nightmares." As the Phoenix broke free of 442C's atmosphere, could see Sky Hunters rising from the storm clouds behind them. Not attacking, but following. Soon, the galaxy would know that humanity's strangest allies were creatures from their darkest legends. And together, they would face the darkness that devours. Had woken up that morning as a simple salvage operator. He was going to sleep as part of the most important alliance in galactic history. It was definitely the weirdest day of his career. But as had said, that's what made him human,